Tonight's Coronation Street features a special appearance from Brookside's Sarah White, as Theo and Danielle Silverton continue to clash. In the latest episode, the estranged spouses attend a mediation session in a bid to keep their divorce proceedings amicable. They are greeted by mediator Deena, played by White, who fans might recognize as Brookside's Bev Dixon. White played the role of Bev for 10 years, before the Channel 4 soap was axed in 2003. As the mediation begins, Theo is horrified to see Noah Headley enter the room alongside his wife. Deena explains that Danielle agreed to Noah's presence on his behalf, forcing Theo to play nice with the villain. However, while Theo tries to calmly discuss living arrangements for his children, Noah begins to goad him. He accuses Theo of assaulting him and shares Danielle's serious concerns about her husband. "I simply can't trust him to look after my children," Danielle tells Deena, before listing Theo's faults. As Danielle continues to pile on the insults, furious Theo bites back, telling her she doesn't care about their kids and only cares about herself. Though Deena reminds them that they're here to decide what's best for their family, it seems the argument has escalated beyond repair. Later, Theo returns home and is irritated to discover Todd is enjoying himself at the pub with Billy Mayhew. After a few drinks, he considers confronting Todd but instead waits until he's back before exploding in a fit of rage. In disturbing scenes, Theo insults and physically attacks Todd, who is oblivious to the disastrous events of the mediation. Todd tries to apologize but Theo declares he's already packed his bags. The Fracture Point. A night of mediation, masculinity, and mayhem on Coronation Street. The cobbles of Weatherfield are no strangers to domestic strife, but on tonight's episode of Coronation Street, the battle was taken from the living rooms and pub corners to the sterile, soundproofed confines of a mediator's office. The ongoing, vitriolic divorce of Theo and Danielle Silverton reached a critical juncture, transforming from a private war of attrition into a publicly sanctioned demolition derby. This wasn't just another soap opera squabble, it was a meticulously orchestrated character assassination, a chilling exploration of coercive control, and the devastating moment a man's carefully constructed world finally imploded. Adding a layer of poignant nostalgia for avid soap fans, the proceedings were overseen by a special guest star, Sarah White, formerly of Brookside, whose presence served as a subtle, haunting reminder of the cyclical nature of television tragedy. The stage is set, the illusion of amicable resolution. The episode opened not on the familiar, rain-slick streets of Weatherfield, but in a bland, beige-walled office in Manchester. The choice of location was immediately symbolic. This was a neutral territory, a place designed to strip away emotion and facilitate rational discourse. For Theo Silverton, a man whose identity is deeply tied to his intellect and his perceived moral superiority, this should have been his arena. He arrived precisely on time, his posture rigid, dressed in a smart but non-confrontational jumper and trousers, a costume chosen to project the image of the reasonable, wronged party. He carried a neat folder, undoubtedly containing meticulously prepared points about childcare schedules, school holidays, and financial provisions. He believed in the process. He believed that logic would win the day. Danielle Silverton's entrance was a study in contrasts. She arrived moments later, a picture of strained vulnerability. Her expression was one of pained resignation, as if she were being forced to participate in a deeply unpleasant but necessary ritual. This, as the audience would soon learn, was a masterful performance. Behind her, a shadow fell across the doorway. Noah Headley, the embodiment of Theo's rage and insecurities, stepped into the room. Theo's face, which had momentarily softened into a mask of professional courtesy for the mediator, froze. The blood drained from it, replaced by a flicker of pure, unadulterated panic. The chessboard he thought he was playing on had just been upended. The mediator. A ghost of soap passed and a voice of reason. Enter Deena, the mediator, played with a wonderful blend of weary professionalism and empathetic firmness by Sarah White. For longtime viewers, her appearance was a delightful, albeit bittersweet, jolt. For a decade, White embodied Bev Dixon on the groundbreaking Channel 4 soap Brookside, a show renowned for its gritty, realistic, and often explosive treatment of social issues, from domestic abuse to drug addiction. The casting was a stroke of genius, a deliberate nod to the legacy of British soap opera. Deena wasn't just a functionary, she was a character steeped in televisual history, a veteran of the front lines of fictional familial warfare. Her presence implicitly raised the stakes, signaling that what we were about to witness was in the grand, tragic tradition of shows that hold a mirror to society's darkest corners. Deena's role was immediately established. She was the calm at the center of the gathering storm. She explained the rules of engagement, respectful communication, active listening, a focus on the future well-being of the children. It was she who delivered the gut punch to Theo, explaining calmly that Danielle had agreed to Noah's presence as her support person. The terminology was crucial, on his behalf. It framed Noah not as an interloper, but as a necessary advocate for Danielle, instantly invalidating any objection Theo might raise. He was outmaneuvered before a single substantive word was spoken. The forced, brittle handshake between Theo and Noah was a masterpiece of nonverbal acting, a brief, tense gesture charged with enough hatred to power the street's cobbles for a year. The unraveling, goading, gaslighting, and the death of reason. The mediation began as these things do, with platitudes and stated intentions. Theo, swallowing his fury, tried to stick to the script. He spoke of his children, Alfie and Hope, his voice cracking with genuine emotion. He outlined his desire for a fair, equal split of time, emphasizing stability, routine, and the preservation of their relationship with their father. He was trying to be the good guy, the responsible parent, the adult in the room. Noah, however, had not come to mediate. He had come to conquer. Leaning back in his chair with a predator's casual grace, he began his campaign of psychological warfare. It started with subtle jabs, implying Theo was being rather clinical about the children, suggesting his plans were inflexible. Then, he escalated. He brought up the assault, the incident in the garden where Theo's rage had finally boiled over. Noah recounted it not from the perspective of a provocateur who had finally hit a nerve, but as an unprovoked attack by a volatile man. He painted himself as the victim and Theo as the unhinged aggressor. This was Danielle's cue. Seemingly bolstered by Noah's presence, she shed her vulnerable facade. Her serious concerns were listed like charges in a court case. Theo's temper was unpredictable. He was often sullen and withdrawn. He prioritized his writing and his ego over family time. He was, she claimed with a devastating finality, emotionally absent. Each point was delivered not with anger, but with a sorrowful conviction that made it all the more believable to an outside observer like Deena. I simply can't trust him to look after my children, Danielle stated, her eyes glistening with manufactured tears. This was the kill shot. In the context of family law, there is no more damaging accusation than questioning a parent's fundamental competency and safety. It goes beyond adultery or financial squabbles. It strikes at the very heart of parental rights. Theo watched, horrified, as the woman he once loved systematically dismantled his character, constructing a caricature of a neglectful, violent monster. Theo's attempts to defend himself, "That's not true," and "You're twisting everything," only played into their narrative. To Deena, his interjections likely appeared to be the defensive bluster of a man being confronted with uncomfortable truths. This is the insidious nature of this form of manipulation. The more the victim reacts, the more they confirm the abuser's portrayal of them as unstable. The fracture point. Theo's truth. Finally, pushed beyond the brink of endurance, Theo's carefully maintained composure shattered. The intellectual was gone, replaced by the raw, wounded man beneath. He didn't just raise his voice. He unleashed a torrent of pent-up truth that had been festering for months. You don't care about the kids, Danielle. You never did. This has never been about them, he roared, his finger jabbing across the table. This is about you. It's about your selfishness, your endless need for validation. You care about your hair appointments and your new friends in him. He gestured violently toward Noah, who simply smirked, delighted that his prey had taken the bait. Theo continued, his voice breaking, you used to look at me like I hung the moon. Now you look at me like I'm something you stepped in on the street. You rewrote our entire history the second you got bored. You don't want a father for your children, you want a villain for your story, and I'm it. Well, congratulations, you've got your villain. In this moment, Theo wasn't just speaking for himself. He was giving voice to every person who has ever been gaslit, every parent who has felt their love for their children weaponized against them. It was a magnificent, tragic explosion of truth, but in the context of the mediation, it was a catastrophic tactical error. Deena's attempts to regain control, Theo, please. We're here to decide what's best for your family, were futile. The dam had burst. The session was irreparably broken. Theo had given them exactly what they wanted. Proof of his uncontrollable rage. The aftermath, the poisoned chalice. Theo returned to Coronation Street a changed man. The mediation office had been a crucible, and he had emerged not tempered, but shattered. The familiar sights and sounds of the street, the chatter from the rovers, the hum of the viaduct, felt alien and mocking. He was drowning in a cocktail of humiliation, impotent rage, and a profound sense of injustice. And then, he saw it. Through the window of the Rover's return, a scene of casual camaraderie that felt like a personal affront. There was Todd Grimshaw, his lodger, the man privy to his most vulnerable moments, laughing and clinking glasses with Billy Mayhew. They were carefree, relaxed, enveloped in the warm glow of the pub. For Theo, this was the final twist of the knife. While his life was being systematically destroyed in a beige room in Manchester, the world was carrying on without a care. The contrast was unbearable. He didn't confront them then. He let the poison brew. He went home to the empty, silent flat, a space that now felt less like a sanctuary and more like a prison cell. He paced, replaying every insult, every smirk from Noah, every betrayed word from Danielle. The walls closed in. Each minute that ticked by, each burst of laughter that floated up from the street below, fermented his fury into something darker and more volatile. When Todd finally returned home, slightly tipsy and oblivious, he was walking into a minefield. His cheerful, "All right, Theo? How'd it go?" was the match that lit the fuse. The explosion. A tragedy in 3 acts. What followed was some of the most disturbing and brilliantly acted violence Coronation Street has presented in recent years. This wasn't a stunt fight, it was a brutal, intimate, and terrifying loss of control. Act 1. The verbal onslaught. Todd's apology, a perfectly reasonable, "Sorry, I didn't realize you'd be back," was met with a guttural, venomous tirade. Theo didn't just shout, he eviscerated. He called Todd a parasite, a feckless waste of space, mocking his failed relationships, his aimlessness, his reliance on others. He attacked every insecurity he'd learned about during their late-night talks, weaponizing Todd's own vulnerability against him. It was cruel, precise, and designed to inflict maximum pain. Act 2. The physical release. When Todd, stunned and hurt, tried to defend himself or reason his way out, Theo's body moved before his mind could stop it. It wasn't a punch, it was a lunge. He shoved Todd hard against the doorframe, his hands gripping his shirt. There was a struggle, a chaotic, ugly scuffle of limbs and furniture. A lamp was knocked over. It was messy, desperate, and horrifyingly real. This was the assault Noah had spoken of, but this time it was real, undeniably witnessed by the audience, and born from a place of utter despair. Act 3. The banishment. As Todd scrambled back, shocked and breathless, trying to process the whiplash from friendly pub banter to physical attack, Theo delivered his final decree. His chest heaving, his eyes wild with a pain that went far beyond the current moment, he pointed a trembling finger at the door. "Get out." Todd, stammering, tried to reason, to understand. "Theo, for God's sake, what happened?" Theo's response was ice cold, the rage suddenly spent, replaced by a hollow, absolute finality. "I've already packed your bags. Get out of my sight." Thematic resonance. A legacy of broken men. This episode transcended its plot mechanics to ask profound questions about masculinity, failure, and the limits of endurance. Theo represents a certain archetype. The intellectual, the man who believes he can think his way out of any problem. He was outmatched not by a smarter intellect, but by a more ruthless emotional cunning. His tragedy is that of a rational man driven to irrationality by an irrational situation. The casting of Sarah White deepens this thematic resonance. Her history on Brookside, a show that famously explored the dark side of male frustration in storylines like Trevor Jordash's abuse of Mandy, creates an unspoken dialogue with the past. Deena, the mediator, has literally seen this all before. She represents the system, the weary process that tries and often fails to contain the human messiness of divorce. Her presence is a reminder that Theo and Danielle's story is not unique. It is a painful cycle repeated in anonymous offices every day. Furthermore, the episode holds a mirror to the nature of narrative itself. Danielle and Noah are crafting a narrative, one where Theo is the abusive ex, and they are the victims. Theo, in his explosion, fulfilled that narrative prophecy. He became the character they wrote for him. His authentic, human reaction of rage was used as the final piece of evidence to convict him in the court of public and legal opinion.